It's time to start the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to get things started for the Great Pop Culture Debate podcast to discuss the best Muppet ever. Jim Henson's cuddly puppets have delighted audiences of all ages for 5 decades on film, TV, in video games, and even, when it comes to pigs, in space. There have been dozens of named Muppets who have been introduced since then, and we wanted to figure out which is the best Muppet ever. I call my Grindr account The Rainbow Connection. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please welcome my panel for this week. One of the only people on the planet to demand Muppets Tonight on streaming, it's Amma Marfo.
We've got a show for you, guaranteed brand new, so let's get into this episode.
Let's get into it. She puts her chicken in der brewer. It's Kate Racculia.
Bork, bork, bork.
And finally, he is also secretly made of felt and googly eyes. Welcome back to the podcast, The DeTurkish Delight, Matt DeTurck.
Hey, everybody. Google, Google, Google.
Google. Before we get into the debate, let's go over how this works. We put up an open poll with just about every named Muppet we could find. For our purposes, we focused strictly on Muppet franchise itself. No Sesame Street, no Fraggle Rock, no Animal Show, nothing. Roughly 60 people took the survey, and we took the top 32 vote getters, ranked them by popularity, and assigned them to a bracket. Now we argue about it and insult each other, all for your amusement. We're also doing things a little bit differently for season 3 because you demanded it. We're taking it down to just one made episode per topic, where we're starting with the Sweet 16 and arguing down to our ultimate winner. If you want to hear how we winnowed things down from the top 32, become a Patreon supporter to listen to the Patreon exclusive warm-ups where we worked our way through round 1. By the way, you can play along at home. Head to greatpopculturedebate.com, click on polls and brackets, and there you'll find the listener bracket for this and every episode of the podcast. Make a copy for yourself. That part is important. Then fill it out with your own picks to see how they match up to our panels. With that being said, we're going to move right on to the debates. First up, it's the ultimate number 1 seed Kermit the Frog versus Pepe the King Prawn, a 4 seed. So we discussed this in advance, and as of right now, it's unanimous for Kermit. But I did want to check, is anyone planning to vote for Pepe here?
Not I.
No.
Not me either.
That's all right. I do want to say on behalf of Pepe, who did win his first battle in round 1, and we were talking about the fact that we wanted to support him as a newer entry to the franchise. Pepe is hilarious. I wasn't fully on board with him when he first showed up in We Believe Muppets Tonight is his first appearance, but I find him very funny on Muppets Now. He's deployed really well on that in multiple different sketches. He's sarcastic. His energy is, I feel like, toned down a little bit. He's a little too manic for me in Muppets Tonight, but I think he's really well done in Muppets Now, and I think he's been a great addition to the franchise. He's just not Kermit the Frog. So
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard.
For that reason, Pepe is unfortunately out in round 2. Next up, 3/4 of the panel found 3-seed Beaker scientifically preferable to Rizzo the Rat, a 2-seed. Kate, do an experiment to test Beaker's staying power while Amma shares a tale about Rizzo. I'm going to have Kate go first.
Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me.
Well said.
Thank you. I will actually make an argument. But so Beaker, I was just in my research this morning, I just found this list of things that have happened to Bunsen Honeydew's hapless assistant, who looks more like a test tube than a beaker. Let's talk about puppet design. He is just like a foam cylinder, and he is so funny. Who doesn't love a ginger? But he has been shrunk, cloned, punched, deflated, turned invisible, blown up, and he comes back for more. He is a portrait of resilience in the fame of almost constant fear, and he has a lovely singing voice.
He really does.
He does.
Okay, that is a great. I always think of him as the pathos, right? Like you can see his eyes. His eyes are just 2 ping pong balls with circles on them.
That's so great.
He knows what's coming, and yet his loyalty is unwavering.
Mm-hmm.
Amma, what do you have for us for Rizzo?
I mean, I know we're going to be a whole bunch of these where anytime you have to argue against, it's like, it will be prefaced with, I love the character I'm supposed to be arguing against. And that is so true for me. But I think Rizzo, just the way that he kind of came into the universe and just kind of quickly established himself as someone who you just really wanted to keep watching. He kind of went from someone who very frequently didn't have to speak into kind of a character that you kind of wanted to hear what they had to say and see how he interacted with other people. So, I mean, I definitely love both, but I think there's something to the way that the Rizzo character was able to grow, just because no matter where they put him, he just kind of flourished. And I think that's something to be spoken of and recognized.
He's got gumption.
Yeah.
And he may have gumbo that you threw out last week. Matt, what is your take on this one? Where are you coming down?
I have to say, most of these, as I go through them, I talk about them with my partner and we go through. This was the most contested one in our household. When I told him I was coming down on side of Rizzo, he was very upset because Beaker is his favorite Muppet of all time. So I'm a Rizzo stan, though. I applaud his gumption.
I'm torn on this one. I actually didn't even have Rizzo advancing through round one, but in it, which you listen to the Patreon, you'll hear the very good arguments for why he should. I was reminded that I saw Muppets Take Manhattan at the drive-in when I was like 5.
Yes! Oh, that's awesome.
I'm gonna set the scene for you. We're in
we're there.
The station wagon,
Picture
the wood paneled station wagon. It's me. I'm gonna say I'm around 5, maybe even a little younger, maybe 4. And my older brother Brian, who's 4 years older than I am, and then my baby brother Todd, who's like 3 years younger than I am, and he's in a car seat in the back. And the scene with Rizzo and the rats skating on the griddle with the butter comes on, and my older brother is so grossed out by the idea of rats skating on a griddle, he begins violently vomiting. Like, he cannot stop throwing up. And so my parents have to take him to the bathroom and meanwhile, I'm there in the car with my infant brother, who obviously is just like a sack of potatoes. And I'm like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm jumping from the front seat to the back seat I'm watching this movie. It is the best moment of a like 4-year-old little gay boy's life. That's my Rizzo the Rat story.
Wow.
There you go.
Amazing.
I feel like every now and again there's like a meme or something floating around on Twitter where they're like, what is your best like theater going experience of going to see a movie? I've not read one better than what you just said.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. And if you want to hear about Amma's tragedy with her sibling in the Muppets, again, check out the Patreon. So I have to say, like, I do love Rizzo for that moment. And I love the fact that he has risen up through the ranks. And he can do a ton by just literally the puppet on a stick turning slightly to an angle. He communicates so much. Beaker, to me, is the better character. As I said, there's pathos there. Bunsen Honeydew, and someone tell me this, we'll get to Bunsen in a minute, but I feel like he's gotten more sadistic over the years. Earlier, he was just kind of clueless, and now he's fully a sadist in Muppets now. And that means that Beaker is his willing, masochistic partner. And I'm fascinated by this.
So Eric, I've thought about this, and I can't really figure out if like we're seeing it as sadistic because we are kind of identifying with Beaker, or if it's actually becoming sadistic. Like, I don't really know where we are at this point, but I think there's like an element of it to me where it might not actually be getting any worse, but I just feel like it's getting worse because I imagine myself in Beaker's position. But even if that's the case, that's a really interesting way to be able to identify with a character. And I don't know that comes up in this context very often.
I don't know either. And that's a great point. But like literally watching the Muppets Now episodes, like the one that introduces Beak R, his AI replacement that Honeydew brings in, like he's horrible to Beaker. Like he's really aggressively mean. And I don't remember him being like that when I was a kid, but maybe I just wasn't picking up on it because workplace interactions weren't really of interest to me as a child.
That's a great point.
So I just don't know. It's actually very complicated.
It's a very Tom and Jerry, Sylvester and Tweety Bird relationship, right? Like, except
that
reversed.
Tom is actually like employing Jerry and doing these things to him. Like,
yes.
Or I guess it would be Jerry employing Tom in this case because Tom is the cat.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, where is HR?
I was just thinking, like, it's not an OSHA compliant workplace. They don't appear to have a human resources department. Like,
not even.
Yeah, they have a legal department.
Yeah, but
no Muppet resources. Can we also just talk about Beaker's mouth in terms of puppet design? It's just a slit cut into a tube. It's amazing.
So good. So good.
Very good. All right. So, Kate, are you sticking with Beaker?
Meep.
Amma, where are you coming down here?
Oh, God. I mean, I think someone has to come down on Beaker's side in the absence of a human resource department, so why not?
Yes.
Matt DeTurck, you are a Beaker. No, Matt DeTurck, you're a Rizzo stan, right?
I am a Rizzo stan. But
all right.
I love Beaker, so, no complaints.
I think that's 3/4 of us with Beaker. Really the winner here is Adam Lubito. So make sure you know that's Matt's partner. We will be moving our ginger scientist assistant forward. Next up, 1 seed, the Swedish chef, currently looks poised to unanimously cook the goose of 5 seed Camilla the chicken. Matt discussed Camilla at length in the previous round. I wanted to just check. Nobody's changing their vote here for Camilla. We're all team Swedish chef, correct?
Yep, team chef.
Despite my passion for chicken puppetry, no, it's all about the chef.
Yes, and despite her on point eyeshadow game,
Absolutely.
We are going to have to advance the Swedish chef here.
Bork.
We are Bork. We are currently deadlocked between 2 seed Animal and 3 seed Sam the Eagle. I don't want to work, so I'm going to bang on the drums all day for Animal. But Amma, why are you pledging your allegiance to Sam the Eagle? Go first.
I don't know. I mean, I think there are a couple reasons for this. So one, I think it's a little bit more restrained of a performance in the sense of like Animal's just going wild. He's got like a note, right? Which is a great note, but it is a note. Whereas
Sure.
Sam Eagle, I think occasionally can kind of like seem to be moved by what's going on around him. So he has a few different gears. There's also the petty piece of me that will openly admit to this on the internet because why not? I had a college boyfriend who as a kid was terrified of Sam Eagle. So the idea of elevating him over other Muppets just feels like the type of petty I'm feeling today. So let's he's going to be sad about it somewhere and I don't feel bad about that. So moving on through.
Oh, well, I love a petty vote, Amma. I cherish it.
And I don't have
I
many,
can
but
call it.
trust me, he deserves it.
Oh, I believe that. Now, what I'm fascinated by is how any child would be terrified of Sam the Eagle.
Yeah.
I don't
Was
get
there
it.
like
He couldn't articulate it. I don't really know why that was.
Is
it
it
'cause
the
he maybe-
prominent brow?
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. Like,
He does look like he's constantly disappointed in you, which I feel like is the Sam the Eagle character.
yeah.
Honestly, it might be more of that because he had like a weird relationship with his dad. So maybe it's just like the idea of a Muppet being
100%.
perpetually disappointed in you.
Yep.
The
He is one
power
of
of
Sam's
projection.
estranged children. That's
Exactly.
which
Oh
we
God, what
discovered.
if he is?
in round one.
Yes. I believe that if you actually read the bio of Sam the Eagle, it says that he has 2 adult children who are in college. They don't speak to him anymore. His daughter is dating an owl, and I think he said that the son was studying to become an artist, and that is why he was disappointed in them. So,
I mean,
Sam.
that's the second conversation in a very short minute as to why we need an HR department. Like,
HR violations left and right. It's just a minefield.
get him some employee assistance. He's going through some stuff, and he is taking it out on his coworkers.
exactly. If you're listening to this Jim Henson Productions, you should seriously. I mean, you have a very funny. It's at the Otter, who's the legal weasel, or is he a weasel? I guess I always look at him as an otter.
Oh, yeah.
It's very funny. Like, bring in the HR department. Like, bring in like Karen from finance. I don't know, but like, there's something to do here. I will speak for Animal, unless
Talk
does someone else
about
want to.
an HR violation.
Yeah.
Right. But Animal, it's funny. Animal obviously is a breakout star of the show. I loved him on The Muppets, but Amma's 100% correct. He has super one note. Like, he's just got one thing. And as a kid, I gravitated towards that. As an adult, it's less of a shtick. I did find him very charming on Muppet Babies, however. And
Yes.
is that considered still to be
That's canon?
taken?
That's canon?
It's canon.
Yeah.
But do we take that into consideration because that wasn't actually the Muppet version of him?
But
Well-
but in the Muppets Take Manhattan, isn't there a baby animal in Piggy's dream sequence while they go through Central Park?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the original origin
That's
of
the
the Muppet
Genesis,
Babies.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
I absolutely think that's canon and counts.
All right. I'm going to go around the horn here. I haven't made much of a great case for Animal. Does anybody else want to jump in here with something else?
I mean, he is like these two Muppets exemplify that sort of like order chaos thing, right? Like you have chaos Muppets and you have order Muppets, and Sam's order is to the point of absurdity and Animal's chaos is to the point of absurdity. And Animal running around saying woman, woman doesn't age great. What? Like he's a great puppet with that like kind of flyaway fur. He is a great puppet. But
are we really about to break this down into who is the lesser HR violation?
Yes.
No, but Kate, that's exactly my like an internal Animal debate, is that I remember as like a very young kid, like running around and like chasing like people at some sort of a family party going, woman, woman, and like being scolded for it. And now I'm like, oh, that did not age well at all. Like that's very bad, like for a lot of reasons. But so that part, not good. But Animal being able to eat through metal for some reason, love it.
Eat drums, beat drums, Animal, beat drums. And I mean, the giant animal head at the end of the Muppet movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's true. All right, so I'm going to go around the horn here. Matt DeTurck.
Oh, Sam Eagle.
Okay. Are you sticking with Sam as the spite vote here?
I am.
All right, Kate.
I'm going with Sam. I got to go with Sam. Yep.
It's Sam then. Sam's continuing.
You are all weirdos.
Well done. Next up, 1-seed Miss Piggy finds herself in a familiar position, facing off against 4-seed Scooter. And I suspect this ends the way that it does on the show. Piggy wins because Piggy is a star, and that is how these things work. So are there any disagreements?
No.
Not at all.
But that said, Kate, you did want to just speak on Scooter.
I do want to speak on Scooter because when I was a very little kid, my father had a nickname for me, and that was Scooter. And it was never expressed as such, but like as I grew up, I'm like, yeah, I had very short red hair and glasses. But it was such a compliment. It's a warm, fuzzy memory. And Scooter is, because he just tries so hard. He's got his cute little like green jacket. I'm fond of him. Even though his uncle owns the theater and, you know, he makes their lives complicated.
I will, like, since we're talking about Scooter, I think this is an important point to bring up.
What happened to Skeeter?
Find out canonically what happened to Skeeter?
Nobody asks. Nobody knows. Don't ask.
I feel very confused and very, very upset about this.
Yeah.
And I think we need some answers. Maybe Skeeter has actually been out, like, running the world. She's been with, you know, I don't know, the Peace Corps. And she'll show up at some point, like, this incredibly, like, interesting, accomplished woman, and like be like, Scooter, you need to get it together. You're still eating ramen noodles and like
he would definitely still be eating ramen noodles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking her up right now, and yeah, she seems like she made it to like there's like pictures of a teenage Skeeter. There's like comic books with adult Skeeter explaining Skeeter's absence. Okay. Henson Associates art director Michael Frith once explained that she's now a famous explorer, never seen again, after an expedition to the jungles of the Amazon. That's dark.
Wait, I got excited.
Half of that's good. Half of that's good and half of that's not.
She's so like Uncle Traveling Matt, which is another Muppet property.
Yes.
There you go. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. Scooter, we do hope that Skeeter's okay. Apparently she's now living with the pygmies in the African or the rainforest. We have next up is 2-seed Fozzie the Bear. Waka Waka walked away with surprisingly unanimous victory over 3-seed Dr. Bunsen Honeydew. Does anyone want to say a few parting words for our mad scientist?
Like, no, just design a character around a cantaloupe. I mean, or literally a honeydew melon. I just love the Muppeteers.
Correct. And I will say, back in the 8 days of AOL Instant Messenger, my original handle was B Honeydew something, some number I don't remember that was useless. And I don't know why I chose that. I mean, obviously it was referencing Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, but why I chose Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, I can't speak to that.
He does have one of the best lines in the Muppet movie. A 4-foot prune. Out of context, wonderful.
A lot of fiber there, and it'll keep you regular.
A lot of fiber.
And Kate, I'd say it's funny that also when we were talking about the Muppet Vision attraction at Disney, that one of my favorite lines in that is about Bunsen Honeydew, which is literally when Kermit says, we invited world-class scientists to come to Muppet Labs, and none of them showed up. So here's Bunsen Honeydew, which I just think is like brilliant writing. I just love it so much.
I do want to add that if you're keeping track karmically, we are advancing Beaker, but we are taking out Bunsen Honeydew. So for once, the good guy wins. Next up, 1 seed Gonzo looks poised to plunge to certain victory over 4 seed Waldorf. So is anybody looking to change their vote on this? I don't think so because it's fucking Gonzo.
Yeah, right.
It's true. It's true.
But I do want us to speak briefly on the importance of Waldorf and Statler as well. So Matt, I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about Muppets, and since earlier we talked about Statler versus Waldorf, but we talked now about how they really are such a unit. And I think that together comes back to, again, the best part of the Muppets is that they both can be sweet, but also they are so sassy with each other. And in this case, not just with each other, because what I love about Statler and Waldorf is you are invited to be a special guest on the Muppet Show, and they're going to treat you like garbage. Like they're actually going to heckle the hell out of you and try to make you hate agreeing to this arrangement that you have put yourself in. I think they are so perfectly performed, and their lines are so good. I think that the Muppets, even though they're probably not going to exist further in this bracket, the Muppets really don't exist in their current form without Statler and Waldorf. They're so intrinsic.
Yeah, I think they're a very important ingredient to the show. They're the acid, right?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, it's going to get a little too cloying. And
Yeah.
so they were separate, by the way, so people understand. In round 1, they were separate. They went up against each other, and Waldorf did advance over Statler for very compelling reasons, if I say so. But I think it's hard to disentangle them as a duo.
Yeah.
And I'm sad to see them go out, but it's against Gonzo. And what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Finally, 3 seed Janice is up against 2 seed Rolf the dog. I will travel to the valley to support Janice while Amma takes a turn at the keys to support Rolf. Amma, go first.
I love Rolf. How can you not? I mean, I just think that he is just kind of a gentle, kind of chill energy, which not to say Janice isn't. She absolutely is. But I also think that in the larger arc of the show and of the property overall, Rolf has kind of continued to have a place. We've talked a little bit previously about Electric Mayhem kind of having a really strong presence at the beginning and then kind of tapering off as music styles sort of changed. And while Janice, I think, has survived that a little bit better than some of the other members of the band, I still feel like there's kind of always a place for Rolf. Yeah, I just think he's so much fun. Like even in the 2011 Muppets movie, like they were going around and finding everybody, and at some point Rolf was like, "Let's just say we picked up everybody else." So like advances the montage so that the rest of the movie can keep going. Like he's just like, you know what, executive decision. Let's just move us forward. And I think kind of having that larger governing presence over everybody is kind of representative of who he is. So I've always really enjoyed that about him.
And as Kate pointed out earlier, like Rolf was the original big successful Muppet. Like pre-Muppet Show, Rolf was the Jim Henson creation that first got on national television and then led to more opportunities for what he did. There may have been some other puppets pre-Rolf, but he was the big one, right, Kate? Like,
yeah, he was the one. I think it was in the 60s. He was on the Jimmy Dean Show. He was on Weekly. He was kind of like, he was sort of his Andy Richter. Like they had a back and forth. He originally was a puppet that they made for like a Purina commercial because Jim Henson did a lot of like commercial puppets. But Rolf was there, and he was Dr. Bob in Veterinarian's Hospital, right? Like he plays the piano. There's this great the duet that he has with Kermit in the Muppet movie. Again, in my research today, I never even thought about this because Rolf is Jim Henson and Kermit is Jim Henson. So that duet is him having a duet with himself. And like they recorded the track separately, but it is still very impressive.
And I listened to that song today too, and it's a great song. It's the two of them bemoaning their love lives, and how women can't live with them, can't live without them, the whole thing. But it's moving, and yet even as a kid, you still find this weirdly compelling, even though you have literally no idea what they're talking about. The one thing I will say, and this is kind of interesting that these two were up against each other, because Janice, as Amma mentioned, the Electric Mayhem has kind of fallen into the background a little bit, but Janice is still quite the popular Muppet. She actually has this bizarre fandom around her. Then when I press people, I'm like, why do you love Janice? Bob Erlenbeck, who is also a panelist in this, is obsessed with Janice. I'm like, tell me why you like her. I have to defend her on the podcast. He's like, I just think she's funny. And I'm like, okay.
Good enough.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. But I was like, all right, I'll work with that. But she's continued to be present, even though the Electric Mayhem has fallen away. I feel like Ralph, who was a titan of the Muppets, I don't feel like they're deploying him as much anymore. Like what's the last Ralph segment you can think of?
I mean, I think the last time I remember him being really prominent was in the Muppets movie, but then like in an interesting way. And now I'm starting to I'm realizing some things about myself as I say this, but I think that some of the role that Rolf had taken now is kind of the role that Bobo the Bear has taken. So I think in a lot of ways, like me really also enjoying Bobo as a character is a lot of me enjoying Ralph in the form that we now get him.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yep. Because he's this very genial, chill energy. Also, in the research I was looking at, people said that he is more a lot of people associate Kermit's personality with Jim Henson, and it's not that he isn't in him, but Rolf is more like what Jim Henson's personality was like. He's not trying to pull center stage, but he's just there. And again, Rolf is a mensch.
He is.
And I also think not that all of the Muppets don't constantly wink at the audience, break the fourth wall, recognize their reality, but some of them do, I feel like, more than others. Some of them have a sense of, they're in their Muppet world, or they comment on being puppets. I feel like Rolf is one of the only ones who finds that balance between recognizing and saying to people well, I can't do this because I'm a puppet sort of a thing. He doesn't exactly acknowledge that, but I feel like he gets the closest to acknowledging that bridge between puppetdom, humans, and then the situation he finds himself in, but does it very calmly as opposed to a panic sort of way, which I think is really interesting about him.
He's a good interviewer. He has good rapport with humans.
Yeah, right? Yes.
Which is also one of the things that make the Muppets so fun and successful, right? Is they exist in the human world, and a big part of the whole Muppet shtick is interacting with celebrities, right?
Yes.
Is that putting those two worlds together.
Yeah.
And to be clear, when I was pointing out that they're not deploying him as much, it's because I want them to deploy Rolf more. I think he's kind of faded into the background, and I don't know why you would do that with one of your marquee characters, especially one who has as much historical importance to the franchise as Rolf. I'm supposed to actually be defending Janice here, so I will say. In addition, Janice is hugely popular. She has this great fandom that follows her. She's we were talking earlier about how there's kind of a Fleetwood Mac going on because originally she was with Zoot in the early episodes, and now she's with Floyd Pepper, a different member of the band. Janice was actually created originally to be a knockoff of Mick Jagger, which is why she has those big lips. And that over the course of her development, she became a woman and she became Janice. And even though she's named Janice, it's probably a nod to Janis Joplin. She looks nothing like Janis Joplin, but she does kind of have that flower child type of mentality, although obviously Janis Joplin is a much more complicated character. Janice is adorable and she's likable and she's hilarious.
For sure.
For sure, man.
Sure.
I'm not gonna go naked, even if they offered to pay me. She's hilarious, just being who she is, and she's a very recognizable and singular Muppet in that way. But even though I am pushing her here, and I know I'm going to be people will be disappointed in me for not pushing harder. I do think Rolf is actually more important to the series. So votes, I'm gonna go. Matt, where are you coming down here?
Rolf, definitely Rolf.
Kate?
Rolf.
Amma?
Definitely Rolf.
All right. So that is a unanimous vote for Rolf. Sorry, Janice fans. You can at me. We are, but you need to mellow out, man. Totally, dude. We are actually going to take a break before we go into our Elite 8 round, but we will be back real quick and we are going to get to the final victor, the best Muppet ever. Join us in a second. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Eric.
So I heard, and this may be true, that you were actually the Great Pop Culture Debate's very first Patreon subscriber.
Was I?
You were. You're not only a panelist, you're also a founder.
Also a founder. I mean, it does give me a feeling of joy to contribute towards high quality podcasts like The Great Pop Culture Debate so that, you know, like I get swag.
Yeah. What kind of swag do you get?
You get a button. That's the one I signed up for. Is there a tote? I feel like there should be a tote.
There's not a tote yet, but that's a great idea. I have some other ideas that I'm working on.
You get access to things early. You get access to Patreon only little mini-sodes. You get to hear the warm-ups before, when everyone's just kind of getting their little sea legs before they get into the main attraction. And you get season 0.
You get season 0. It's exactly right. You will never hear the otherwise, folks. And there's some great episodes in that, which include Best Madonna Single, Best RuPaul's Drag Race Lip Sync, Best 90s Cartoon. And the only way you can hear those is by getting a Patreon sponsorship for as low as $2 a month. Then you even get season 0 just for that. So thank you very much, Kate. We appreciate all of our Patreon sponsors. And if you do have the interest, please go to patreon.com/Great Pop Culture Debates and support us. Welcome back to the Great Pop Culture Debates Best Muppet Ever episode. We are going into the Elite 8, and we're going to start right off with the Titan, Kermit the Frog versus Beaker. I'm going to go around the horn. Amma, where are you voting here?
Oh, wow. Beaker, but it is so close.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Woo!
Beaker. Kate.
Kermit, my soul, my little green froggy soul.
Matt DeTurck.
Oh, I agree. It's so close, but I'm going to have to go Kermit.
I'm also Kermit here, but Amma, I want you to tell me why you're picking Beaker over Kermit. I'd like to hear the argument here.
So, Kate, in the same way that you just mentioned that Kermit is your soul, I feel like there's a significant part of my soul that's Beaker, just constantly overwhelmed at what's going on, no idea what to say in any given situation, to the point where, like, when I had the opportunity to get, like, a custom pop socket, I have 2 of Beaker. So, like, just every day I would, like, look at my phone, and it would bring me an absurd amount of joy to just see that, like, panicked face and be like, me too, buddy. Me too.
But you still get the job done, just like Beaker. That's the amazing thing. He's completely terrified at all times. He's being besieged upon, and yet he gets the job done.
And there's something so affirming about that. Like, you can be overwhelmed and in over your head, and things are catching fire, but you will get it done. And that spoke to me so loudly.
Yeah, my thing here is I love both of these characters. I adore Beaker. When I watch the Muppet Show, no matter which version it is, Muppets Now, Muppets Tonight, original Muppets, the Beaker and Honeydew segments are among my favorites, and I don't think it's at all a coincidence that on Muppets Now there's always segments in every episode with Beaker and Honeydew, Swedish Chef, and Piggy. Those are like the 3 ones you always get, and I think it's because those are the ones that are the most consistently entertaining. You can't go wrong with that Beaker and Honeydew shtick, and I think 90% of that is Beaker, not Honeydew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
But he's up against Kermit.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, Kermit is kind of like the flagship Muppet, and I totally get why he would advance in this one, and I hold no ill will about it, but just... like Kate said, like, Kermit is her soul and Beaker is mine. So that was the vote, but I totally get it.
I would also like to mention about Kermit, though. I think that there is, you see this a lot with people talking about like Mickey Mouse and Disney, is that there ends up being a situation with companies where they are afraid to, quote unquote, do too much or go too far with their icon because their main character ends up becoming more of a logo or a symbol for the company.
Of a symbol,
yeah. Exactly. But I feel like in Kermit's case, yes, there is a little bit of that everyman and everything. But I think
frog.
Thank you, much better. Thank you. I think that the Muppets have done a much better job of keeping Kermit interesting and relatable and funny than Disney has with Mickey, for example, who I feel like up until the recent animated show, just in the last couple of years, didn't know what to do with him for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Had a really hard time.
Kermit has a demonstrable personality. Like he has a character, a rich character built into his history, and in a totally different way than Mickey Mouse has.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like Mickey, and I could go off on this for hours, but like Mickey never really needed one, and then he never really developed one, and then after the person that created and voiced him died, they didn't pick it back up because they didn't want to change it. Yep. Whereas I think Kermit, having been created more recently, more complex from the beginning, they have a little bit more to work with.
Yeah.
I think that's all really good. Those are excellent arguments. It seems like we're moving Kermit forward, correct?
Yes.
With nothing but respect for Beaker. The next battle is Swedish Chef versus Sam the Eagle, and I'm again going to go around the horn. I'm going to start with Kate. Where do you come down here?
The Flirty-burgy.
Matt DeTurck?
Absolutely 100% the machine is going to Flirty.
All right. Amma Marfo.
I am giving it to Swedish Chef, especially because he is eminently watchable, even more so when I learned at 25 years old. Like, someone had to point out, it's like, watch when he uses tools, it's human hands. I don't know how I didn't notice before that, but it is the only thing I can see when I look at him now.
It's a testament to Muppet magic, right? You just didn't even.
Yep. You just don't notice until you do, and then you can barely look at his face. Like, it's incredible.
And isn't it someone different operating the hands? Isn't that kind of the gag? That, like, he doesn't know what's going on?
I think so. But, like, and again, like, once I figured that out, like, I love Sam Eagle and always have and likely always will, but there's just something so odd about that feels like a very Muppet specific type of odd, and I'm like, absolutely.
It's so
pork, Swedish Chef.
Matt DeTurck, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I just wanted to say I'm not caught up in current on Muppets now. But I will say that for the first episode or two of it, I wasn't wild about what they did for Swedish Chef segments, only because I felt like they were treating him more recently as like he's upset or angry or something. I'm not doing a good job of wording this, but I felt like it was more him versus the human component or the human contestant who was also on the show with him. And I feel like one of the Swedish Chef's biggest advantages is that he thinks he's amazing. He knows he's amazing, and nobody else technically tells him he's not. And I feel like the Muppets Now current treatment of him is kind of like dropping him down a peg, and I don't like that slander against the good chef. So
that's actually true, and I've watched multiple episodes of Muppets Now, and that's exactly accurate. Like, the segments are funny because of Beverly Plume, who I don't know if she existed before Muppets Now, but she's a great addition.
She's great, yeah.
But yeah, the Swedish Chef comes off as an asshole on them, and he's really combative, and I don't care for that. This man is an irky-dirky legend, and we need to respect him.
Yes.
Well, he was always sort of chaotically violent in the Muppet Show, and the way that show, if you go back and watch it, it's so much more slapstick, cartoony, violent than you maybe remember. And it's hilarious. But the whole, the Muppaphones and what's his Horatio Scuggs, the entire point of that sketch is that he is beating these small creatures that yelp in tune, right? And the Swedish Chef is part of that, and the food is alive, and he's flirt de flirt, but there's joy in his. It's like Julia Child on acid. I love the Swedish Chef.
The joy of cooking.
And I'm like, is this offensive to Swedes?
Great question. Swedes, if you're listening, let us know. Do you actually dislike this? I will say, every time I go to IKEA and have meatballs, I think of the Swedish Chef. So there you go. We are advancing the chef. Next up, it's Miss Piggy versus Fozzie, and what I think is the hardest matchup of the Elite Eight. Let's start with Matt DeTurck here.
I have to go Piggy, and this is a very personal thing for me, because as a gay boy growing up, but who was, I feel like, constantly dealing with battling that whole gay stereotypes about all the gay stereotypes, in effect, I feel like technically Piggy is who I aspire to be as a human. I technically aspire to be that fabulous, that much of a self-confident person that I wish I could be Miss Piggy. I will never be there in any way, shape, or form. But Piggy for me is perfect. I adore Piggy.
Amma Marfo.
Ooh, well, to first acknowledge that this is a Frank Oz off and that Miss Piggy and Fozzie are voiced by the same person. I feel like this can kind of represent a battle within the soul of Frank Oz himself.
Indeed.
Fantastic, because they're such different characters. But I think I would pick Miss Piggy moving forward from this. Again, as someone who loves comedy, performs comedy, I think too much of my comic sensibility was formed from Fozzie Bear. But having since evolved into my own tastes and like recognizing what that gave to me, I think if we're talking about being emblematic as a Muppet, Fozzie's absolutely up there, but he's not above Miss Piggy. He just isn't. So I think kind of for the sake of looking at who would you pick as a Muppet to kind of represent this whole enterprise, Piggy has to move forward for that reason.
Kate.
Excellent argument, Amma. Like, I can't argue that Piggy is more iconic. Have we said it yet?
I don't think so, but take a drink.
As a Muppet than Fozzie. Even though I love Piggy, sometimes she scares me.
Oh yeah,
like that's why you should love her.
Yes.
I know, but Fozzie is so. And Kermit and Fozzie and Gonzo are sort of like the triad Muppet of my soul. And I love his sweetness. I love how he just tries so hard and doesn't stop. Right, he's just a kind, dorky, sweet bear felt Muppet. But I can't not push Piggy forward here because literal icon in our lifetimes.
Absolutely. One of the most glamorous women to ever exist, I think.
Happiness, Miss Piggy.
We will get more to Miss Piggy next round as she's unanimous, but I do want to say that Fozzie to me is one of the most human of the Muppets.
Yes.
I feel like I know bears that live in New York City that are Fozzie. That is a guy who exists. There's many of those guys, and they're lovely, and they're just sweet, and you just really like them. They're good guys, and just trying to get along, and they just want the best for everybody, and they tell these jokes that are so terrible that they're actually really kind of cute. Fozzie is charming. Piggy is not, but Piggy is fabulous. And so for that reason, Piggy wins. So moving on to the final Elite Eight, it is Gonzo versus Rolf. And I'm going to start this time with Amma.
Oh, boy. This is very, very difficult because I think if we were to use the emblematic argument that just came up, I think there are cases to be made for both of them, and there are good cases to be made for both of them. My heart is saying Rolf, so I'm going to move him forward.
Okay. Matt DeTurck.
Ooh, that's when it comes down just straight up to your heart on it, I have to go Gonzo because I deeply respect the nonsense, the chaotic energy that he brings to this, where to the point that the Muppets felt like they had to do an entire movie just to try to figure out where Gonzo came from because he's so different from the rest of them, but also we can have debates left and right about whether Muppets from Space actually is good or not. But I think it's interesting that
canonically it has been addressed. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So Gonzo for me.
All right.
I gotta go Gonzo. Mad respect for Rolf as the sort of like beginning of Muppets in popular culture. But Gonzo is such a special Muppet because he is a whatever, right? He represents that Muppet element that is not you look at him and you're like, it's a dogs and chickens and things. Like Gonzo is some other thing who is so like the way that Gonzo's character throughout all the movies represents sort of outsiderness and joy in outsiderness, even though he has doubts, right? Is such an important, like, oh my God, the song that he sings in the Muppet movie, I cannot even talk about it because it is just such a beautiful song about trying to figure out who you are and where you fit and who your people are. He's just really special. And he's also completely absurd, right? Like he's a completely absurd, iconic character who always, gets to play some weird thing out of his trumpet from the Muppet Show. Oh.
Yeah, I have to go Gonzo here for all the reasons that were described. He's unique in the Elite Eight in that he's the only one that is not clearly based on something, right? He is a unique,
he's a pure
creation.
Yeah.
And there's so much character and there's so much humanity in him. And I think he is just integral to that nuclear family that is the Muppets. And not that Rolf is not, because he is. But I think, again, as I mentioned previously, I feel like they have been sidelining Ralph, and I wish they wouldn't, because I think, like, bring him out. I want to see more of Rolf. He was one of my favorites as a kid, but Gonzo's Gonzo. And I remember, like, he also, I feel like, has more current pop culture cachet. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a Gonzo video game from the 80s that we had. There's, like, he has merchandise in a way that I don't think Rolf does. But even if you set all that aside, I think just as a character and as a puppet, Gonzo has almost his own little mini universe in the Muppets, right? He's got his chickens, he's got his act, and he is himself a production. And so for that reason, I have to push Gonzo forward. I will, as an aside, say that I took my niece Addison to see the Muppets in 2011 when she was like 5, and she made me go to the bathroom when they were going to the toilet factory to get Gonzo. And I missed that entire segment. And to this day, Addison Grace, I have not forgiven you. And I just want to say that on record. All right. So I am sorry. I think that means we're bouncing Rolf. Are you okay with that, Amma?
I am. And as I think about this, like, going back to kind of one of the larger conversations that I've had about the Muppets being representative of kind of a place that accepts everybody, I think Gonzo being as out there and as weird as he is, to the point where he's literally unidentifiable and still fitting so seamlessly within that environment, I think that's emblematic of that element of the Muppet experience that makes a really good case for pushing him forward. Like, they really will accept anybody. Look at him.
Yeah,
exactly. They'll accept everybody. Look at Gonzo. That leaves us with a final four of Kermit versus the Swedish Chef and Miss Piggy versus Gonzo. And I always like to take a step back and look at the final four, see how we got here. Is it the correct one? I absolutely think this is the right final four. One of the things I often find with this debate and the structure with the brackets is that sometimes you will get in the final four 2 very clear ones that are going to advance to the final 2. There is not a weak person in this F4. This is a really strong F4, and I think this is going to get really nasty as we take to the next round, because these are all amazing creations, and we're all very passionate about them. So Kermit versus Swedish Chef, we are going to start. Matt DeTurck, where are you going?
Oh, this is so tough, because I feel like we just, in the previous thing, I argued about why Kermit is such a good emblematic representation. But again, like, down to like guts, down to comedy, down to personal like taste and like comedic influence. Oh, it's the Swedish Chef for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Woo! It's already getting hot. Amma, where are you coming down on this?
So this is an incredibly difficult thing, because to me, this is an argument about who the Muppets are versus what the Muppets can do or what the Muppets can be. And that is a really difficult thing to tease apart, because Kermit is kind of like, I am the Muppets. Like, when you think of the Muppets, you think of me. But when you think about the ecosystem that exists overall of, like, how silly can something be? How heartwarming can something be? How truly absurd and wild can something be? That's not Kermit. That's the Swedish Chef. So, I'm going to give it to the Swedish Chef, because I do hold a lot of reverence for kind of the capacity that he gives to the Muppets overall, and maybe the kind of comedy that they kind of empower overall. So that is a profoundly difficult thing. I'm surprised even as it comes out of my mouth, but I'm giving it to Swedish Chef.
Whew. The Swedish Chef should be wearing hot pads right now, because there's some hot takes coming out of the oven. Kate Racculia, where are you coming down?
Oh, Kermit. I love the Swedish Chef. I completely agree with your argument, Amma, that he represents a kind of unbridled, creative, joyful, absurd possibility. And that is one of the hallmarks of what makes the Muppets so great. But Kermit he has layers of personality. He just like can express himself in ways that, you know, maybe you could make an argument that the Swedish Chef expresses himself perfectly, and he doesn't need to have anything more than that. But Kermit he's sort of the soul in the comm center that still like goes crazy and like he, you know, Muppet Arms is a Kermit thing. Kermit's Muppet Arms. But he is the soul of decency and hope and gentleness and sort of the power of doing a thing together. The Muppet movie is one of my favorite films of all time, period. And Kermit is the one at the end of it. Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
I knew it was going to happen.
It's going to happen. When he comes to the end, he says, life's like a movie.
Yeah.
Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. And I built a whole life on that, right? So he means a lot to me.
I'm 100% voting for Kermit here, and thank you, Kate. That was a very sweet moment. And I want
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I get real passionate and emotional about that little frog.
Well, we're not done yet. I can almost assure you I'll cry before we're done. So you will not be alone in that.
And here's the thing. So I'll say this for the Swedish Chef. The Swedish Chef is hilarious. If you were looking at the Muppets as individual performers, I think he outperforms Kermit hands down. He's constantly producing laughs. The man had his own cereal that I bought in the 80s, Cinnamon Stars. If you weren't eating it, you were missing out.
What's it called? Crunchy Stars? Something like that.
Crunchy Stars. Thank you. Crunchy Stars. They were delicious.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry you didn't get to sample those. They were really good. We had them constantly as kids. But if we are talking about the Muppets as a property, maybe this is right or wrong. I consider Kermit to be the embodiment of Jim Henson, and I feel like you can't not move that forward. We wouldn't have them. You can argue we couldn't have the Muppets without Rolf, true, but we really couldn't have the Muppets without Kermit the Frog.
Sure.
I think, in and of itself, the Rainbow Connection as a song,
being green.
Easy being green. These are quintessential to this franchise, and you would not have any of it without Kermit the Frog. Yes, he's an everyman. He's the one who's in the background, who is not the flashiest Muppet. He's not the funniest Muppet. He's not the one who's producing the segments that you're going to remember. But none of this exists without Kermit. He is the nucleus of this entire operation, and I think
it says something about the ethos of the Muppets that he is the center around it, right? He is not ego driven.
Yeah. He takes the back seat. He could take over this. He could be like me and take over and make all the calls when it comes to ties. But he doesn't do that. He lets other people shine. And I feel like, as you just pointed it, the Muppet ethos, that is Kermit. And it's Jim Henson. And the two of them are inextricably linked to me. So I have to go with Kermit here. Is anyone willing to change their vote?
I cried.
She cried for you.
I do agree with the argument. I mean, I think that I mean, yes. So going back to the idea of like who the Muppets are versus what they can do, I mean, I think that it's unequivocally Kermit being the one that kind of like identifies that, and especially with the connection to Jim Henson, that will sway me. I will change my vote to Kermit, because that is absolutely right.
Matt's very, very emotional.
I personally feel that all of that is absolutely completely true, and I agree that Kermit is the heart of the Muppets 100%. But if we're talking about just at the moment how I'm feeling chaos, man. So at the moment I'm
burn it down. That's what the Swedish Chef would want you to do.
That's the thing. Right now I want to make popcorn and fill the entire house. Like, you know.
And I will say, in about 5 minutes, I will look back on this conversation and regret having swayed Amma, because if I'd let the Swedish Chef go through, my final winner would have had a much easier way in. But we're advancing Kermit, and it's now down to Miss Piggy versus Gonzo. And this time I'm going to start with Kate.
Why are you trying to hurt me?
Because we only hurt the ones we love, Kate.
You know, it's true. I have to stick with Gonzo, but I am swayable, because ultimately I do think that Piggy needs to be one that goes forward, but I have to hang out with my little whatever.
That's fine. I will take your first answer.
Yep.
Amma.
There isn't a wrong answer here.
No.
There isn't. The makeup of the Muppets is such that I would like to have a woman represented, because there aren't very many, and the ones that they have, like we talked about with Camilla, don't always have like their own thing going on. Janice does, but she's part of a larger group. And I think Miss Piggy is very much somebody who is like, she is her own person. Like, yes, she has a relationship with Kermit, but it does not eclipse her in any way. She is absolutely herself. And I like that lesson as kind of something to be imparted upon by the Muppets overall. Is like, who, like we talked about with Gonzo, who you are counts. Be that person. So I'm gonna give it to Piggy. So we have a woman representing that ethos.
How about you, Matt?
I am absolutely, as much as I adore Gonzo, I am absolutely Team Piggy, because I feel like in also a situation where the Muppets largely, are either gender neutral or male presenting. Like, I feel like, and especially with a lot of the performers having been men also, even, again, Frank Oz's Piggy, I do feel like Piggy is never treated differently for being either quote unquote a pig or also for being a woman. I feel like Piggy is instead someone who all of the Muppets either respect or fear, or both. Largely fear.
They should.
As they should. But I feel like also she's the one that, again, for better or worse, a lot of them end up circling around. Yes, they absolutely may be like, oh my gosh, why are we putting on another Piggy number? But also they know she's the star. They understand that she can bring everybody in. Like, I feel like Piggy ultimately is representative of the show business side of the Muppets, which is, I think, important to them being able to work across various media. Is that she represents, you just need a little bit of that glitz, even if she's going to trip and fall into a fountain during her dream sequence, inspired by Busby Berkeley, is that she still manages to make it work and play it off as charming, even if she's also more of a diva than even like Cher. So,
yeah, I'm saving my ammunition for the final two because I'm voting for Miss Piggy and she's advancing. But I will say that Miss Piggy is the Galadriel of the Muppets. All shall fear and love her.
Yes.
And for that reason, there is no choice but to stand. So that means we will be bouncing Gonzo, and I know that's sad for you, Kate. It's sad for me too. I think it's sad
okay.
for all of us.
It's okay. I mean, again, there's no, we all win. Yeah, I feel like the project of pitting these Muppets against each other is sort of antithetical to what Muppets are.
Very, very much so. Very much so.
So, but for the purposes of this conversation, it's also very entertaining.
It is indeed. So we have a final two, I would say somewhat predictably.
Oh, yes.
Of Kermit versus Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
And I want to start by opening it up. Let's go with Matt.
Only one of those two can have karate chop action. So honestly, it's Piggy for me.
Okay. Amma, where are you coming down?
I'm giving it to Kermit here. And I think it's because, honestly, the last round argument about it being kind of emblematic of who Jim Henson is, like, that sticks. That is sticking in a way that I can't ignore moving forward in this because, and Kate, here we go. You're no longer going to be alone in this.
Woo!
The idea of what he was able to build in terms of an entertainment property, a means to educate kids, a means to impart values that we all kind of need to continue to live by.
Kermit was on Sesame Street before the Muppet Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was. So he's kind of been the glue that has brought us through to like a number of other different properties. So like he keeps popping up other places, but at every turn, this person who decided to take this love for puppeteering and this love for talking to people, not just kids, even though that's how they're often framed, and just take that energy and impart it on the people around him and infuse it into the character so it then moves into other people. Like, that, what better calling could you have? Like, if you were a Muppet to be called the best Muppet, what else could you be doing? I just think that's, yeah, I gotta give it to him. The influence that it's had and who it represents is just too big.
I remember when I said that 5 minutes later, I was going to be regretting that argument I made for Kermit. Regretting that argument I made for Kermit. Kate.
So I do briefly, as much as Piggy is a true icon, I want to talk about the elephant in the room. Piggy re Kermit is real not great about consent.
Very true.
Like,
fair point.
And as a young person, her aggression toward him, which I knew was meant to be comic, it bothered me the same way that Ernie's not aggression, but sort of like Ernie teases Bert for just being who Bert is bothered me. And so like my primary argument for choosing Kermit is he is, I think, that idea of the quiet, meek, generous, kind of loses his head sometimes, but like just a nice little frog is kind of, you can build a whole world around one person like that, and people will want to create a community around that. And I feel like Piggy is like this incredible creation of id that like needs Kermit to balance it, right? And Kermit needs Piggy to balance him in the same way that like all Muppets are sort of like energy balancing force fields. But I have to come down on the side of Kermit because Piggy is she like married him without consent. Like, I didn't like that.
Which is like a wild sentence, but like go back to the evidence. It's all there.
It's all there.
She was a woman with a plan. She knew what she wanted.
Because you share a love so big, I now pronounce you frog and pig.
So I hear everything you're just saying, and obviously I made a very impassioned argument for Kermit last round. But
yes,
I have notes on why I think
we've been building to this moment. I'm so excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, a dissertation. Miss Piggy has the star power of Liz Taylor with the stylings of Joan Collins and the backstory of Dolly Parton. She is, in a word, everything, especially everything that a young gay boy wants. Am I right, Matt DeTurck?
You are so right.
By the way, when you were saying all of the various gay stereotypes, I'm like, just say me, Matt.
Like, just add me right here on this podcast.
Exactly. I'm right here. She is a New York Times bestselling author, as Miss Piggy's Guide to Life, published in 1981, was on the bestseller list for 29 weeks, that's half of a year, and peaked at number 4 on the charts. She is the creative tour de force behind Miss Piggy's aerobic exercise workout album, which has instruction on how to snackercise, lift the one you love, sit down, and aerobics. And by the way, I own it on vinyl. She has her own celebrity fragrance called Moi. She was on the cover by herself of People magazine, Elle France, the Saturday Evening Post, TV Guide, and Tatler. She has starred in 2 spin-offs of her own, The Fantastic Miss Piggy Show and Miss Piggy's Hollywood. She is the most versatile player in the show's arsenal, working in sci-fi, working in hospital dramas, and hosting her own lifestyle talk show. In addition to her renowned karate skills, she is also physically incredibly strong, having benched metal bars on more than one occasion. And here's the thing. If you have to pick between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and let's all agree that this is the Muppet equivalent of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
I would never dispute that. That's absolutely right.
You're gonna pick Liz. You're gonna pick Liz. You can't not pick Liz.
But Kermit is no Richard Burton. Or rather,
isn't he though?
Do I not? Like, hold on. I have no sense of Richard Burton other than as and Mr. Liz Taylor.
Well, and I think that's the difference, Kate, is that in that particular scenario, like, she was the outsized personality, but their influence was like, we'll say at the very most equal.
Yes.
And I think that like Richard Burton is not emblematic of anything larger than whoever Richard Burton is.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the analogy holds, but only to a point, I guess.
I will concede that. I was trying to think of another, like, even more recent, relevant pop culture couple that keeps breaking up and getting back together, and I'm a little bit at a loss for an example for that, besides, like, reality TV show people.
Cardi B and Offset.
Okay, Cardi B and Offset.
I wasn't even trying hard.
No. So, in that case, aren't you going to pick Cardi B?
In that instance, yes. But again, if Offset were somehow emblematic of the world of rap as a whole, which he isn't, he might think so. I don't agree. But like, then you'd be having like a different conversation. I don't know that there's a scenario that I think that Kermit and Piggy is a uniquely positioned relationship and that they both have really outsized influence on their respective fields, but for very different reasons.
Yep.
Mm-hmm,
Yep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yep. It's apples and oranges. It's Kermits and piggies.
It's Kermits and piggies. It's frogs and pigs.
It's frogs and pigs living together in harmony.
And chickens.
Or not.
Chickens and things.
And
Dogs
chickens
and
yeah.
bears and chickens and things.
So let me ask this. Matt, are you still stuck on Piggy? Are you convinced with Piggy?
I am personally. I agree wholeheartedly with all of the Henson, like, behind the scenes life lesson and what he's trying to put forth. And I believe in that. And I absolutely think that's amazing. But I'm still stuck on Piggy.
It's fair.
Amma and Kate, are you still stuck on Kermit?
Yes.
Yes.
And so here's the thing. I never do this. I never do this. But even looking at this, in this particular case, it is a special situation because you have a situation where it's more than just the nostalgia factor. There is an actual like cultural moment, and the Muppets is, I think someone said earlier, Kate maybe, pitting the Muppets against one another is antithetical to the entire purpose of the Muppets.
Right. Yeah.
Jim Henson gifted the world this property, and obviously it's touched all of us and millions of people in a very special place. I don't think there's anything wrong in this particular case giving it a tie, because I think both of them, Kermit is the heart of the Muppets and Miss Piggy is the star of the Muppets. We agree in this?
Yes.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Yes. Yes. Slow clap.
Not only do I agree with the ruling, that is a beautiful justification for it.
Yep.
They're
nothing without each other.
Yeah.
I love that.
Whether they're a couple or not, it doesn't, they're like twin stars that keep the universe in balance. And I don't see a way in which, like, I wouldn't feel right convincing either one of you to switch to Kermit. I really wouldn't, because that argument is, I think, very powerful. At the same time, I can't give up on Piggy. Matt,
Mm-hmm.
like, you're with me on this, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
I can't do it.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want you to, because there's like half of me is like, of course it's Piggy. Another half of me is like, of course it's Kermit. Like,
yeah,
down the middle.
As we've said so many times, like, there isn't a wrong answer here. And I think maybe, and again, to like Kate's larger point, it's possible there's not a wrong answer because we shouldn't really be doing this in the first place. But since we're here,
down with this podcast.
This is like the roof is breaking in and a rainbow is coming down on us right now.
That's right. This is our rainbow connection, folks. The lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Well, and let me also say that, like, I can very clearly say, like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this in the first place, while also recognizing that Kate and I pushed incredibly hard for this to happen.
Oh yes, 100%.
It's true. But unless I hear any objections from the panelists,
None.
we are going to call this a tie, and I think it is the only real tie. We had one other tie in a mini-sode, and that was bullshit, and I will state that, but they weren't budging.
I was on that one too.
It was bullshit, Kate, and I'm saying it was bullshit, and I stick to that. But it was Strut and That Ass. You can check it out. It's actually one of our most popular episodes. This is an actual tie, and I feel very comfortable going forward saying this is our decision. Our best Muppet ever is actually Kermit and Miss Piggy. Do you agree with our decisions? Do you think that we've had someone's fist up our chutes for too long? Find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and drop us a comment on this episode with your picks. Better yet, head to greatpopculturedebate.com and tell us what you think. And while you're there, check out the other episodes we've recorded, see if there are any polls that are open for your votes, and weigh in on which future topics we should take on next. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure that you hit subscribe and consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. And if you really like us, please become a subscriber on Patreon or Pod Hero, as that allows us to keep doing what we're doing. I want to thank my panelists for joining me today. To me, you are more precious than the baseball diamond. And thank the lovers, the dreamers, and you for listening to the Great Pop Culture Debates. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinions. Waka waka!